Hi, welcome. My name is Nicole, and I am here with a message. And this message is for those that find themselves in the wilderness season and may have been there for a while, and you're not understanding why you're still there. You've been anticipating the promised land for a while now, and as a matter of fact, it seemed at one point like it was right within arm's reach, but now you're wondering if the promised land is even if you would even see the promised land. And this message, or my point in bringing this message to you, was to give you revelation and insight on what exactly the wilderness is and what exactly the promised land is, and what it's going to take for you to see that promised land, for you to see those promises that God has made to you. Now, the wilderness is where the children of Israel found themselves in between leaving Egypt and entering into the promised land. The wilderness is where you decided to give your life to Christ. You decided to, live for God. You've given your heart to Him. But in the wilderness is a time where God is pruning you. It's a time that He's uprooting those bad habits. It's a time that He's changing those mentalities. It's a time that God is renewing you. And this is something that I struggled with because I didn't fully understand what the wilderness was. I just thought it was a time that once I left Egypt, once I decided to leave the world and come up under the refuge of God, or come into covenant with God, that when God decided that it was time for me to receive my promises and enter into the promised land, that's when it was going to happen. But that's not the case. That's not the case. There's some work that is involved when we're in that wilderness season, because to be honest with you, the wilderness is not a place. The wilderness is a mindset. It's a dimension. And the promised land is also the same. The promised land is a mindset. It's a dimension. It is a renewed and healed version of you. So during the wilderness, we're dealing with all the things that we dealt with in the world before we decided to come in to give our hearts to Christ. So we've been hurt. We've gone through traumas, childhood traumas. We've dealt with betrayals. We've dealt with so many different things we've dealt with in Egypt. And then we come into the wilderness after we give our hearts to Christ. We come into the wilderness, and sometimes we find that we're still dealing with some of those things. But a lot of it, and not to say that life is perfect, but a lot of it has a lot to do with the type of individual that we are. And what God needs us to understand and realize, which is why when you're in the wilderness, He expects or wants you to be close to Him, because He's going to help you to basically do self introspection, to understand and realize those things that are in you that are unhealthy. You have unhealthy habits. You have idols. You have a certain type of mentality, a limited mentality, a fixed mindset, and these things are detrimental to your being, the person that you are currently, and it is detrimental to whoever God is calling you to be, that renewed version of you. So basically, you have to shed all that stuff off of you before you could step into the promised land. Because if you've read the story of the children of Israel, they had a slavery mentality. No matter what miracles God performed in the wilderness, no matter what miraculous provisions he provided for them, they still could not wrap their heads around that they had left slavery. They felt like life was better in slavery than it was when God was setting them free. And that's what so many of us in the wilderness, or so many people in the wilderness deal with, a slavery mentality. And God, when you come to God, when the kingdom of heaven, there's freedom. It's not bondage. It's bondage in the world, but it's not here in the kingdom of God. In the kingdom of God, there's abundance. There's prosperity, which is ease. There's freedom. You're no longer under that demonic system, that matrix in the world. You're under the kingdom of heaven. You're under your own, the kingdom of heaven's payroll. The kingdom of heaven is providing everything for you. God is providing everything for you. You don't have to have a hustle mentality to get the things that God will bless you with. So God needs you to learn to trust him. He needs you to fix your mentality. He needs you to have a more of a growth mentality than a fixed mentality. He needs you to learn who he is, how he operates, his nature. He needs you to have a relationship with him. God needs you to understand that he is your provider. He is your source. He needs you to understand that he doesn't tolerate idolatry. You cannot be a servant of God wholeheartedly and have idols and serve other gods. Because if you know your word, or you know the Bible, countries Israel and people were destroyed over and over again for having idols, for serving false gods. So you have to have in your heart that God is the only God that you're serving, and you have to be aligned with his will for your life. So these are some of the things that has to be done in the wilderness, has to be fixed and corrected. Some of the renewals that have to take place, some of the sheddings that have to take place in order for you to enter into the promised land. So again, there are things that we've gone through in Egypt and sometimes in the promised land that has caused trauma, childhood trauma, different abuse, different things that has happened. But in the wilderness is where we learn to cope with these things healthily, where we heal from these things, where we learn how to live and thrive as healthy beings, even if that means going to therapy. I don't know about you, but to me, God is my healer. He's my therapist. He knew me better than anything else, but that doesn't change the fact that therapy did help somewhat, but God was the one that ultimately healed me. He was the one that ultimately did my healing, but everything else helped. So those are the things that we are required to do. Self-introspection, work on ourselves. Learn how, the triggers that we deal with, learn how to cope, learn how to be resilient people and not allow the things that we've dealt with and been through to bleed onto others. These are the things that once we work on, we fix, again, our mentality. We move from a slavery mindset to one of freedom. We get rid of the idols, all those things. Once we do that, then you will begin to see your whole entire life transform, because now you're entering into that dimension of the promised land. And yes, the promised land is a dimension. It is not necessarily a physical place. It's more like it's a dimension. So anyway, I came to set some people free from the wilderness. And not that the wilderness is bondage, but sometimes when you're in the wilderness, it's like things are just going in the total opposite direction than you anticipated, and sometimes it feels like it's like you're stuck there. So I came to unstuck some people, get some people unstuck, get some people out of stagnation, and I pray and hope that that this message will set you free, will release you into your promised land. So anyway, I hope and pray that this helps someone, this bless someone. And until next time, you have a good one. Bye.